You know, as everyone knows who watches this show, I absolutely love history. And I know many of you do also. So it's wonderful that we have this connection here together in our wonderful friendship group, all of our chums out there. And the Victorians really did a lot for us, didn't they? You know, when you think about it, because you're surrounded, particularly over here in the United Kingdom, by wonderful, splendid Victorian architecture. They certainly knew, alongside the Edwardians, how to battle the British elements, you know. And here is the Grand Hotel in the very heart of Brighton. And it was the sort of place, you know, that you really had to have money, a lot of money to come and stay here, because it was for the wealthy. It was for the Regency set, and they really believed that coming down here to take the waters, breathe in this wonderful, fresh English Channel air, could do wonders for your health. What better staying in the lap of luxury, in a hotel that had the very first lifts outside London, and they called them omnibuses. Yeah, they weren't lifts then. It was that glitzy, that glamorous. The canopy that's now been removed literally was the big canopy that you saw in the original pictures. And this was simply because, as you were, well, you know, if you and me were rich, we'd pull up outside and we wouldn't get wet, because Brighton was known, like all seaside resorts, as having a lot of inclement weather. The Grand really came into its own life in 1864. It had 300 bedrooms, and it was considered the absolute height of society. Everybody flocked. They wanted to be able to say, I'm dining, meet me at the Grand, I'm staying at the Grand. It was almost like the Savoy in the very heart of London. And this building was considered for that time to be the tallest building in Brighton. And if you stayed here, you could look directly out across, as I say, the English Channel. And on top of all of that, it cost £100,000 to build. A lot of money in 1864. But the Edwardians, you see, were very clever with stock shares and gathering money in momentum, because apparently there was going to be lots of money to be made at these newly acquired and very much in vogue and fashionable seaside towns. For a lot of pop aficionados out there, can you imagine it's 50 years since this happened, right here in the centre of Brighton at the Brighton Dome. That's right, ABBA storming it to win that year's Eurovision Song Contest, as ever hosted by the wonderful Katie Boyle. Now, we all know Waterloo, don't we? But it was here at the Grand that the Swedish foursome came back to meet the press and rest their weary heads after storming to the top, winning that particular contest that year. And it's interesting to think, because when you think about the Eurovision Song Contest now, it's such a global event. I mean, it was then, but it was very much in its infancy. And a lot of people still come here wanting to stay in the same rooms that ABBA occupied to apparently relive the moment. And many people in Brighton who are still around today were actually there on that very night and told me that it was a night to remember. But apparently ABBA had no idea that they were in the running. And the real trick was this. Originally, apparently in the afternoon during the rehearsals, they continued to sing their song in their native language. But by the evening, they'd switched it to English. And that was really the whole trick that turned everybody on to the brilliantly written Benny and Bjorn song, Waterloo. But back here at the Grand was where the celebrations truly took off. recently, of course, you've entered the world of the Grand, and it is still amazing, as you can see, as we're looking at today. And it's interesting to think, isn't it, that over 100 years ago, when they built this hotel, they could never really envisaged that here in 2024, holidaymakers still come every single night of the week, and particularly at the height of the summer, to stay and gaze out across the very same view that they looked at in 1894. This was the age in the Victorian era of things like the influencer. You know, we call them that now, the Instagrammer, the Twitter account, the YouTube card holder, whatever you want to call them. They were all doing it long before we even existed. And they felt, of course, that they created something that would last. And as many people will testify to, the Grand in Brighton has certainly done that. Neil Sean on the promenade in the very heart of Brighton.